In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, the All-Wise, True, and Living God, we bear witness that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is his messenger. Welcome to another edition of Jock Brothers Presents Let Us Make Man. I am your host, Kadeem Amir Muhammad, and we have an exciting show for you today. We will be talking about mental health in the Black community. But before we begin, you know what we got to do. We got to go around the table and introduce all of our co-hosts to the show today. We're going to start with my brother down from Orlando, Florida, but he's definitely up here in Atlanta in the ATL. He's the brother that keeps us grounded, my brother Jackie Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace to the God, brothers and sisters. Welcome to another edition of Let Us Make Man. We have a wonderful, wonderful show tonight that's long overdue. So I look forward to hearing from our beloved guest. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, brother Jackie. Now, the man next that I'm going to introduce, he's the man that's behind the scenes. He's pulling it all together. He's the phone call guy. He's the text guy. He's the send out the email guy to make sure all the people have the link to call in and link into the show. My brother, Kaiwi Mohammed.
Assalamu alaikum, family. Brother Kadeem described the show as the most exciting show. I'm going to say it's the most important show. There's a lot of people out there hurt, so we got the right people on the show to talk about that. So I hope you enjoy this, the list of guests we got today, coming from all different classes of backgrounds and mental health. Enjoy this show. Assalamu alaikum.
All right, my brother. And thank you so much, brother Jackie and brother Kawi. And to all of our listening and viewing audiences, naturally, we know that most of you are watching this live via your Facebook page. We ask that if you are on Facebook, share this link with everybody that's on your friends list. Share this link also on your Instagram. Share it on your Twitter. Share it on your Snapchat. Share it on all of your social media outlets. Now, for those of you that are logged into the show from YouTube, you know that you can definitely type in your comments, type in your questions that you may have for our guests, and we will take all of your questions. And the goal is to get every single person's question answered this evening. So mental health, what is it? Mental health includes our emotional, our psychological, and our social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. Mental health is definitely important at every stage of life, from childhood and adolescence through adulthood. So on today's show, we want to talk about mental health, what it is, what are some of the causes of mental disorders, what are the stigmatisms associated with mental health, and of course, what are some viable solutions and alternatives for dealing with mental health disorders. So we've assembled a group of qualified individuals to help answer these questions so that you, our viewing and listening audience, as well as ourselves, may handle the mental health disorders in our own individual lives. And I would imagine that all of us who are descendants of slaves here in America suffer from some degree, no matter how large or small, but some degree of mental health disorders, and probably are really largely unaware of it. So help me to bring on our guests. We're going to start with our brother. He hails all the way from North Carolina, licensed clinical mental health counselor. He works in the field of mental health and have been working in that field for over 20 years with experience in private practice and outpatient and inpatient mental health settings. His focus caters to the mental well-being and counseling needs of children, adults, and families. So please, with the Jock Brothers round of applause, please welcome to our show, our brothers Anthony X. Meekins. Praise be to Allah. Brother Anthony, if you will, please, very briefly, brother, please share with our listening and viewing audience a little bit more of your background.
Say that one more time, brother. You broke up.
Yes, please, if you will, very briefly share a little bit more with our audience, a little bit of your background.
Yes, sir. So as you mentioned earlier, I've had 20 plus years in the field of mental health, working with individuals, children, and families, both in hospital settings, both in outpatient mental health settings and in locked psychiatric units as well as in private practice. So I've had a very broad spectrum of places to be in and to see different individuals, clients, or patients who have been going through a variety of different mental health issues and concerns, and to just strive getting them back to a place of some peace and some comfort and some balance and well-being. And it's always a process. It's not just something that happens overnight, because most people didn't get to where they are overnight. So I'm grateful and honored and humbled to be amongst such wonderful, powerful people who have a concern for the mental health issues of Black people in our community. And I hope we can chop it up some tonight and get a better understanding and provide some help for everybody who is maybe going through something and just can't quite figure out where they need to go or what they need to do to get some help. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Brother Anthony, for that. Our next guest hails out of the City of Angels, all the way from Los Angeles, California. She's a graduate of the University of Illinois. She's a licensed clinical social worker and a psychotherapist. This sister actually has a foundation. She's the founder of a foundation called Grow Transform. And that foundation actually is based out of Africa. And welcome to the show with a Jock Brothers round of applause, our Sister Teresa Teacher.
Hey, yes, ma'am.
Assalamu alaikum, Sister Teresa.
Walaikum salam. Walaikum salam. Thank you so.
Sister, please give a brief introduction of some of your accolades to the people.
Oh wow, this is one of those uncomfortable moments where you have to talk about yourself. So when you listen to other people for a living, it's always a switch up when you have to be told to get on the couch, right? So
Right.
thank you all for inviting us. I think you are brave, bold brothers in the way of just trying to help our people, and there is nothing better than that I can think of. And so I want to thank you all for inviting us on the show to talk about this overdue topic. A little bit quickly about myself. Not really thinking I was ever going to go in this field. I just so stumbled on this field by Dr. Karenge, who is the founder of Kwanzaa, that just miraculously told me out the blue I should major in social work. He knew the plight of our people, and he knew the struggle of our people back when I was a young girl in college, in my first year of college here in California. And I didn't know why, but I just followed his advice and went to school in New Orleans and then graduate school in Chicago, and really just kept pushing forth to major in social work, because the one thing about social work is that it encompasses evaluate how your environment, how your culture, how you were brought up, your family, and all these other dynamics really impact us. And I thought that really spoke to Black people, is that we really don't consider how our environment and our past struggles and pain and culture and norms, slavery not, Africa not, all these things affect us. So I've been doing private practice and working in the hospitals for some years now. And I do have my foundation, Grow Transformation. It's based here, but I do a lot of my work over in Ghana, Africa, as well as couple that with therapeutic techniques for some of the projects where we launching on schools online and things like that. So I'm just very excited. My platform today is just really talking about raising awareness in our community, in the Black and Brown community, and how we can start to begin to knock down some of those hurdles for accessing mental health.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Sister. Thank you so much. Now, listen, this next couple, this is what I call the power couple. You know, we see magazines, and you know they're talking about the power couples. They usually the rich and the famous.
Not Jay-Z and Beyonce. Okay. Come on,
I've
man.
had the pleasure of knowing this couple for 17 plus years down in the 7th region in the state of Florida. And I have to be honest and tell you, of some of my favorite couples in all of the world, they're in the top 3. I really
Big word.
you know, and you know, I'm gonna start with my sister. I almost said Tamika, Sister Naira. Listen, my sister is, listen, your bio is so, look, I just want to point out some very poignant points of your bio. She is the founder of a nonprofit, I believe, that's called the Black Repair of the Black Family. Also, she is a Gold Seal HD auditor with Dianetics. All right, and her husband alongside her. Now, let me say this. You know, we always say behind or aside every Black man, there's a great woman. But behind this powerful sister, she has one of the greatest men I have ever in my life had the pleasure to personally know. I like to call him the Luther Vandross of the 7th region. That voice, brother, he can sing, man, and it just hypnotized you. But he's the co-founder of the nonprofit, and he is also a Gold Seal auditor in Dianetics. So please, with the Jock Brothers round of applause, let's bring on Brother David and Sister Naira Muhammad to the show.
That's right.
And if you will absolutely share with our viewing and listening audience some of the things about yourselves.
Well, absolutely.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
He's always gonna yield to me first. As y'all can tell, I'm the communicator.
That's a gentleman. That's a gentleman.
I'm the communicator, okay?
Come on now.
So let's set the record straight. All praises to Allah. I want to thank you so very much. And of course, I always like to begin everything in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Right. And I want to thank the Jock Brothers for having myself and my husband onto your program as we represent the repair of the Black family. Wow. Our goal is to restore and repair the family structure in the Black community. So we are very excited to do a collaboration with you. We also work on behalf of our student regional minister in the Nation of Islam, Brother Student Minister Patrick Muhammad, and we represent the 7th Region Coalition, COVID Coalition. And we represent the mental health aspect of it. So our work is broad. We do a lot of things, should I say nationally and internationally, where we take our traveling seminar around the country pre-COVID, right? Praise be to Allah.
Yes.
Taking tools and technology to organically restore and repair the Black family. One of our, I guess I could say specialties, our main focus is to take on the I guess I want to say the fight for the Black mind, right? Black minds matter. So we have taken this technology given to us by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, codified for us by Mr. L. Ron Hubbard of Dianetics, right? This is the modern science to mental health. So we have specialized in it. We've gone in and we are bringing it back to our institution so that we can be able to have another avenue, solutions for our people to receive help and also preventive measures. As my dear sister said, the effects of slavery, you know, the generational traumas that we face, what we're facing during the COVID, all of these things we have solutions to. So we're just happy to be a part of your platform, to be able to offer our expertise and most certainly our love, because we do it for the people.
That's right, my sister. That's right. Brother David?
Yes, sir. My wife really said it well. But before I begin, of course, we do begin all things in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. And I would like to greet the listening audience and my Jock brothers.
Yes.
With the greetings and peace of Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Yes, yes,
Sir.
yes. I appreciate your spirit and your offer to have us here on the show. I really don't have anything else to add. My wife said it well, quite well. The only piece I guess I could add, though, is the necessity, too, of when we're talking about mental health is sometimes missed is our diet. And that could play a very, very, very important part. So how to eat to live is absolutely necessary.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you. So listen, let's just get right into it. You know, I want to ask to each one of our guests, what are some examples of mental health disorders? What are some examples of that so that we can recognize it perhaps in ourselves and those around us? And then, in fact, let's start with Sister Teresa, Brother Anthony, and then we'll go Sister Naira and Brother David.
So just to clarify, are you looking for?
Pull your mic down. Can you pull your mic? Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. I do this all day. I'm sorry. So yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. Some of the major mental, more common and more prevalent disorders would be our depression, our anxiety, high levels of anxiety and depression, which then can lead to panic attacks and mood disorder. We have lots of personality disorders. There's a list of disorders. The key is more so how do we get there, and what are those causes, and what leads to the other. And so, such as lack of productivity and other things like that, and barriers to change. So I'll let Brother Anthony, if he wants to expound. I'm just trying to make sure I'm answering the question and not go off on my own tangent. So you got to help me out. If you want something more specific, I definitely can go on, Brother.
Well, sister, you're fine, because we're definitely going to get into the who, what, when, where, how of mental health issues, my sister. We have to do that, but we just want to get some examples of what mental disorders look like, what they are. Brother Anthony.
Absolutely, thank you. And to dovetail off of what my sister said, she's right, spot on with all that she just mentioned. But when you talk about mental health and mental illness or mental disorder, it's always on a spectrum. Okay, so you can be mentally ill, going with a strong disorder and require hospitalization. And then you can have someone who is just very high functioning, self-actualized, and we could definitely say that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan fits that category, okay? But then you have that space in between where you can have a lot of different things going on that's going to affect and influence your day-to-day comings and goings. So one aspect of how it is affected is you can have, like my brother so importantly mentioned, your diet plays a part and how it kind of comes about, how it might manifest itself. It can be how you are birthed into the world that can affect your mental health. It's definitely your life experiences that play a part in your mental well-being, and then it's your relationships with others, as well as environmental factors that can influence our mental well-being. So it comes at us, and I do say us because we, as the quote-unquote professionals, we have our trials and struggles too. Yes, it's just on different levels at different rates, and how it impacts the individual, because it's based on what you got and what you get when you come into the world. We call it resiliency. We call it that stuff that can help you cope with the hits, not if they come, but when they come.
Yes,
so
sir.
That's some of my take on mental health / mental illness.
Yes, sir. Thank you too. And finally, Brother David and Sister Naira, what are some examples that you all have seen of mental health disorders, or what are some examples of mental health disorders?
Okay. Yes, sir. Well, let me just look at it from two perspectives. When I look at just mental health in general, right, I look at it from the perspective of the ability to enjoy life, right? The ability to create balance in life activities. Your well-being is without some named disorder. That's how I see mental health. Your ability to be, right, to exist, to be yourself, to know thyself. But when I look at mental illness, that's different, because now we're looking at it from a perspective of a disorder, right? Which is, like sister said and brother said, anxiety, depression, grief, apathy, anger. All of these things can be somewhat found to be disorders when you look into this DSM manual. There's a disorder for almost every symptom the Black man and woman has in America, right? So when I look at that, and when I start looking at it from the perspective of disorders when it comes to conditions, you know, yes, you have depression, you have suicides going up, you have domestic violence going up. All of these things can play a part when it comes to our disorders as a people. The lack of knowing yourself, all of these things, disconnects from God, all of these things can put your mind in a way that you're not able to function in the way that we were born to function. So yes, we may have circumstances where we were, you know, as the Bible say, born in sin, shaped into iniquity. All of these things can add to the mental so-called illness that we are labeled with in this dispensation of time. But when I see our people, we're out here, we're strung out on drugs. We get on drugs because we're trying to find a way to cope. You know, I can go on and on, so I'm kind of pull back a little bit. But the main thing that I see in this time period when it comes to mental disorders, I'm finding more and more of us are suffering from anxiety, grief, and depression.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And suicide is definitely like one of the top things that we deal with a lot. I deal with a lot of young people, more younger people are facing suicidal thoughts and suicidal attempts, especially in the Black community.
Okay. Yes, sir. Brother Anthony, you said earlier someone who is self-actualized, and you described the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Can you give me the definition of that, self-actualized, and what does that look like?
A way to describe self-actualization is a person who functions at a highest level of both their relationships and interactions with others, their degree of self-love, self-assurity, their degree of knowing who they are and not feeling concerned or threatened by what other people may think or say. It's being secure in oneself. It's knowing oneself. And how you get to a place like that is, it is a process of self-nurturing, self-cultivation, but also you don't get it unless you're connected to a source greater than you, where it comes from Almighty God Allah.
Right.
And you get to that place because you're cultivated, and you get to that place because you also have people around you that can help cultivate you to reach the highest and the best level of you, of where you can be and functioning in a world that's so really anti-self-actualization. You know, this is a world that's full of corruption. This is a world that's full of distrust and deceit. This is a world that's full of everything negative that you can think of. But you have to have something that you can plug into in the morning that's going to always help recharge you, start you on your way, and get you into that place and that mindset where you're constantly evolving. But most of our people in the Black community, based on circumstances often beyond our control, we're in a process of de-evolution. So part of what trying to get people to address their mental health needs and issues, I had mentioned earlier, knowing thyself. Well, you know, a lot of times if you don't know anything is going on, or that anything is wrong, or that anything is off, or that anything is out of balance, you know, you're functioning in a world that seems normal only because it's all you know. It's all we know. You know, that great matriarch of the Underground Railroad, Harriet Tubman, she said, I freed 1,000 slaves, right?
Exactly.
But I could free 1,000 more if they but knew that they were slaves. Well, the same thing goes on and takes place with us. You know, we have to kind of recognize or be shown that we are not operating at the highest level that we can operate on, and then hopefully moving in a direction of self-actualization. But it's a process, and none of us get to where we are by ourselves. So it's about having a strong support system and people around you that love you and care about you, and they have your best interests in heart.
Absolutely.
Thank you, brother. Listen, this is an engaging audience, and already we do have a couple of questions from our viewers and YouTube. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to put the question on the screen so every single one of you all can see the question. And this is a question, and I don't know who it's directed to, but the question is, do the signs/symptoms affect men and women differently? And I guess she's talking about the signs of mental health. And who would ever like to start? Sister Teresa, Sister Nair, Brother David, Brother Anthony, whoever wants to start with that, please take off.
Sure, I'll take a starting race at it to get us started, because
great eyes, great eyes.
So listen. As much as we like to merge male and female in this new day and age that we've come into, and the way social media has and the way socialization has hyped us up to be equal, the fight for women's lib has taken on a new coloring that we want to measure ourselves up to men. But I'm here to tell you, we don't. We're not the same, and we don't have the same triggers. We don't have the same coping skills. We weren't made in the fashion to produce the same way. So therefore, we're not affected the same way. And this is my personal opinion in the work that I do. I believe that we both come with a set of skills to manage mental health differently, to manage our lives differently. And it's up to us to tap into those first natural skills. And then we can coexist together and tapping into those things that we both share to work together to improve our overall mental health. And so women, we tend to be communicators. We tend to be more expressive. We tend to deliberate about things a little bit more when it comes to our personal needs. I think men, they tend to display their nature differently and how they like to communicate things. So just right out the gate, that's you got to agree that that's a no, right? And so are women more likely to seek mental health treatment than men? Absolutely. It's an absolutely fact that we tend to seek because we want closure. I know you brothers know when sisters want to get to the bottom of something, we just gonna keep going. We're gonna keep going and keep going, right? So we always want to confirm and resolve a situation, and brothers tend to use avoidance a lot when it comes to difficult topics that we want to talk about. So, and in other words, it's the same thing with treatment and therapy. Brothers there may be some stigma attached to getting treatment, as brothers don't want to feel weak. They want to feel crazy. I work in the emergency room, and that's the number one topic. And it's usually the people who are really got mental health issues that say, I don't want to do that because I don't want nobody to think I'm crazy. I said, oh, it's too late. But no, it's just, it's always a battle between the two. But I really do think there are some things that we do share, but I also think that there is some very nature-like things that I think separate us too. And that's why God made man and he made woman, so that we can help each other to then overcome that.
Praise Allah.
Beautiful.
Nice.
Either of the other guests, did you all want to tackle that question before we go to the next one? The questions are pouring in, so we got a lot of things going on over here.
A lot, too. Yeah, that's
You
right.
gave a beautiful explanation of that, you know, and it goes back to the nature you know, of how men and women are developed and how we, you know, we operate in this dispensation of time, you definitely will find the woman, you know, as more of, as she stated, a seeker. You know, we're looking for God. So we're looking for answers, you know, so definitely.
So how important then is communication when it comes to mental health? How important is communication?
Well, I mean, it's very important because in any successful therapy, you're going to find the person talking, right? Talking helps you to release not just the words, but the emotional charge with it. So the more you're able to talk about it, and it's not just going to talk to a counselor or psychiatrist. If you can talk to somebody in your family, the more you can communicate, the more better you feel. You know how you got that friend, that home girl that you can just call and just dump on, and you're just talking, and by the time you're done, you feel better. She might feel like crap, but you feel better, right? So that's what a therapy session.
Okay.
So communication is very important when you're talking about sanity, because we're looking at this from the viewpoint of sanity versus insanity. So the more you can be able to get off those things that's bothering you, that's affecting you, the more sanity you have. So communication is really important when you're talking about the difference between sanity versus insanity. Because you know, when you can't talk about it, that's when you explode, right? It's the temperature rise. You just start getting angrier and angrier because you want to tell somebody how you feel, right?
Right.
So definitely, if you want to blow out some steam, communicate and find a safe. This is the real most important thing that I would like to say. Find a safe place to communicate, a safe person to communicate to, someone who will listen to you. Because oftentimes people want to tell you what you're going through. If you're in a form of therapy, you don't want somebody telling you what's wrong with you. You want somebody who's going to listen to you and allow you to express what you're going through and be a good listener.
May I say something really quickly with that, and I'll make it quick. If we must go back a little bit, when we talk about communication, it sounds like a very loose leaf term. We use it quite a bit and we throw it about, but there are barriers to how we communicate. There are barriers to why we don't effectively communicate. So there's communication and there's effective communication. And so a lot of times, as she said, a safe place, a lot of time we identify unsafe people to talk to by a dysfunction internally. Like we talk to people who actually make our situations worse. And so sometimes we have to identify what safe is, but unfortunately, because of our own issues of unresolved issues of trust, trauma, and other things that we've gone through in our life, we don't know how to communicate because it wasn't taught in our homes. Unfortunately, in the Black family, we were taught to shut up and sit down and be quiet. We weren't taught to express ourselves. Right. And white families, you want to know why Billy always talking? It is because his parents gave him a platform to talk at an early age. And unfortunately for us Black and brown families, we were taught slavery residual parenting, which was to sit down, be quiet, and you didn't have a voice. Well, that's what the slaves were taught, and that's what we're taught. So we have to break the cycle of how we communicate with our children, how we communicate with each other, but we also have to be effective and meaningful and purposeful for how we do that as well.
Right. I wanted to add something to that because there's something, everybody. I wanted to add something to that.
He's here.
There was a language, something that I learned called psycholinguistics, and everyone should study some form of fashion in this area, so when they communicate with each other, they're able to explain their emotion and feelings. Like you said, my parents, they shut me down, and I wasn't able to explain myself. It took me a long time, but once I got into college and I started to go into different studies of psychology, I learned different languages. I learned to communicate and express my feelings, but I didn't know the language. I couldn't even express my own feelings because I didn't know how. So that's very important in the communication, that we learn the language. So everybody should study some form of fashion of the language, correct?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well said.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And brother, I want to say this too, since we're on the formulas of communication and having this tool and technology, having the tools and technology of Dianetics and Scientology, you know, that's one of the things that I appreciate about the technology, because you learn affinity, right? Which is how to share space with someone and to love that person, or love, that's affinity. Then you have reality, where you have learn how to get points of agreement, right? Then that increases the communication, that ultimately it brings about understanding. So there's a formula to communication, and the more, as to say, it wasn't taught to us in our families, the more we can learn different methods of learning how to effectively communicate, the more our mental issues that we're facing will begin to go down, because now we feel safe enough to talk about our problems. Now we can be able to look at one another and eliminate the trust issues. A lot of times we don't talk because we don't trust,
Right.
you know. And as she stated, you know, some of that comes from within, but then also we have to be able to see, you know, can I trust you to give you the intricacies of my mind and heart?
Wow.
One of the things I like to add too, with communication, and it's very important, especially for those of us who are, I guess, quote unquote therapists, for lack of a better term, is the emotional tone scale that is used as well in Dianetics. Because one of the things that Brother Ahmad just mentioned, a person who would not be able to communicate, he could be in a tone level of apathy or a tone level of fear. So learning how to communicate to one who is in one of those tone levels as well would be very important, so that what my wife just mentioned, the reality or points of agreement are reached, and the communication can grow and really fester in the environment to create a better relationship.
Okay. You know, personality disorders are very broad and among some of the most difficult forms of mental illness to treat. And often people, they live with these disorders, and they don't seek help because they're able to function in their day-to-day lives. Do you all find that there are some mental illnesses or disorders that are easier to live with than others?
Great question, brother.
Anybody? I'm gonna start calling out a name. Hey, this is
I got one.
I'll go ahead and start, beloved. I'll go ahead. So when you say,
Call him out, Kadeem. Call him out, Kadeem.
so when you say easier to live with, I think that's relative. I think that depends on the individual and how they're kind of dealing with it, coping with it in their own mind, in their own world. I think a different way to describe it is the degree of severity that certain issues are over others. So, for example, when we talk about depression is on a spectrum, right? It's on a continuum. You can have someone who is sad, because we all get depressed, I believe. We all have bouts of sadness based on things that happen in our life. When my father passed, I was sad and I was grieving, and I would even go as honest to say as I dealt with my own world of depression. But because of certain supports in my life and certain skills that I already have and things that are a part of my growth and development that was put in me by God a lot, but also through my parents and my support system, I had a certain type of resilience and a certain type of oomph to kind of not let it knock me totally out the box, so to speak, to not let it totally keep me worn down, not able to get back up. So the component, the piece about some being worse than others, I think that's a perspective, and I think that's a viewpoint, and I think some could look at it like that. But I tend to look at it more in the light of you have certain issues that are more severe than others, but also depends on what kind of supports people have and where they can go to get the necessary aid and help that they need to kind of cope and deal with the different types of mental issues that are out there.
Okay, praise be to Allah. We have another question from the viewing audience. So I'm gonna put it on the screen, and it's for Brother Anthony and Sister Teresa. It says, have you ever experienced a terrible occurrence that has impacted you significantly? First question. Examples may include, but are not necessarily limited to being, let me put up the second half, being the victim of armed assault, witnessing a tragedy happen to someone else, surviving a sexual assault, or living through a natural disaster. So that's for Brother Anthony and Sister Teresa.
I guess I'll take it. No, I'm gonna let you professionals get it. Go ahead, professional.
You got to pull your mic down, Sister Teresa.
I'm sorry. So can you give us example of which one she's referring to? It's I kind of went kind of fast on the ones that she was saying.
I'm gonna reread it, okay?
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
I'm gonna put it on the screen. It says, have you ever experienced a terrible occurrence that has impacted you significantly? Examples may be, may include, but aren't necessarily limited to being armed assault, witnessing a tragedy, happen to someone, surviving a sexual assault, or living through a natural disaster.
Do anybody hear a typing sound?
Yes,
I do hear that.
that's coming from Brother David's and Sister Naira's mic, brother.
Oh, okay.
We don't have it over here. We're looking for it. Oh, there we go.
It's gone. Okay. I think it's all good.
Yeah, I don't know
Go
why.
ahead, Sister Teresa.
I mean, my answer would be yes.
communication from you guys.
Okay. Right. She kept it really simple to our viewer. She said yes. Brother Anthony.
I would agree. I have my own yes as well. Of having had a personal experience that significantly impacted me. I think that, you know, what we always say and what we always do, particularly as mental health professionals and counselors or therapists and helpers, we definitely will share personal experiences and things that have impacted us with a client or a patient in a way that is done very professionally and in a caring way, and in a way that we believe is going to be helpful and important to their development and to their issues that they're struggling with in general. We strive not to be overly personal when sharing information, but we do it in a way where it can be helpful to kind of allow the person to navigate through their own difficulty. And more than happy if the sister, needed to have something discussed in that fashion, in that manner, more privately, would be more than happy to do that within a different forum.
Yes, sir.
And I will say that I'm okay with sharing. I share all the time with my patients, but as he said, I do it in a therapeutic approach to help them see that our people have so many trust issues that I want them to know I'm not the Black girl who went to college and came from a good home. I come from a very broken background. I come from I wasn't supposed to make it. My grandmother told me I was never going to be nothing and that I was going to have a bunch of children and be on drugs. So I'm a testimony. And so I have been in tragedies, and I don't know if she's probing to then go into the segue of PTSD. but I have witnessed a heinous crime, and I've been involved in severe accident that left me paralyzed. So I understand if she's going in that direction, that and she wants to talk about PTSD, which our people are struggling with, a lot of residuals from being incarcerated. Imagine being locked in a cell for 10, 20 years, what that does to a man or a woman. So, or being sexually abused your whole childhood, what that does to a female. I'm not sure if that's the direction she was going, but I'm doing a therapeutic technique. I'm kind of pulling out where the direction of where you're trying to go with the question.
Yes, ma'am. Brother Ahmed, you got a question next?
To the panel, I know we dealt with communication, and dealing in the Black community, was that like number one on the top of the list, or anger management? Is anger management like number one? You know, all the killings and the deaths and you know, all this crime. Is anger number one or communication number one? What do you think is number one on the list in mental health in our community? I'm gonna start calling out names.
We have a panel. We're gonna unmute your sister Naira. Go ahead.
Okay, please be to Allah. Yeah, so I would say, you know, the lack of communication it produces anger. You know, so when you're looking at mental health, it's the inability to express yourself, right? And this is where all of these different emotional states of existence start to develop, because we don't have the ability to communicate ourselves in whatever area we need to express ourselves. So anger to me would be a product of not being able to communicate what's really happening inside my mind, inside my heart, you know, what I'm going through. So now it produces anger, you know, it produces grief, it produces depression, it produces all of the different states of existence that one may find him or herself in. It takes away your life force, right? So your ability to be able to your ability to be sane, you know. So the aspect, and that's when you talk about therapy solutions, the most important form of therapy is communication. When a person is able to talk it out, it releases the emotional charge that one may have attached to experiences. And that's what I found with Dianetics. It has helped, and it helps to not remove the incident, remove the trauma, but remove the emotional charge that is attached to the trauma, so that one now can recall or remember it without the emotional charge attached to it.
Praise be to Allah, sister.
Let me just say one more thing about that. Was you said, Brother Ahmed, let's just jump right into barriers to why Black people don't access communication. Or let's talk about why we're upset in the Black community, Black and brown community. As you said, Brother Ahmed, it's back to our basics, which is freedom, justice, and equality. There is no freedom, justice, and equality amongst our culture. There is a lot of injustices, and of course that breeds all kind of other things. And when you don't have justice, and when you have inequality to treatment, and when you have inequality and lack of access to insurance, and you have lack of access to proper foods, you can't eat good. I had someone stand up in a meeting and say, you know, I don't know why they don't want to eat good in basically the ghetto. We tried to take them organic foods, and they should eat organic foods. I said, well, when they're worried about how they're gonna pay their rent next month, I think the last thing they're worried about is eating organic foods. They're worried about just being able to have food, period. And so sometimes our lack of resources and our lack of understanding, all those things is not a good environment to live in. Therefore, it's producing substance abuse, which we haven't even touched on, how that impacts our mental health. Substance abuse is tearing our community apart when it comes to substance-induced mental illness. And what that means is that meth epidemic is on a rise in the Black community, causing major psychosis and people hearing things and walking out in the street naked. And they come into my emergency room, and I said to a young Black man, I said, when did Black people start using methamphetamines in Compton? And he said, well, it's cheaper and it gets you higher longer. I said, but it gets you killed quick. And so we have all these things that are happening in our community. And so how can you have any peace and how can you have any real rehabilitation when you have these ongoing stressors happening in our community? And so that's why it's so much more important that we start addressing the barriers to improving our mental health and identifying that we have an issue. Often, sometimes we identify mental health when it's gotten so far out. I mean, we just sort of label our family members. We'll be like, oh, that's Auntie Chica, you know how she is, but she's mentally ill. And we start to normalize the drug addict in our family and the mental ill in our family. And we just kind of keep walking by them, but we're not really acknowledging that there's a real growing issue in our community. So I would like anyone else who would like to participate in what they see in their community and maybe pose to the listeners, what do they see in their community that they've normalized that we now need to see, that we need to address?
Man, I wanna share a 60-second clip of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I have this set up and we can talk about this. Give me a hot second here. I want to play something quick.
Injustice can make a person insane. And when a person feels that nobody is listening to them, they have no court for the redress of their grievance, then they decide to take matters into their own hands. And justice, which is symbolized by a scale, a woman blindfolded holding a scale. When that scale is tipped, the weight of truth hidden and punishment overriding the facts.
Is that playing clear for you? I got a lot of lag on my side. Is that playing clear?
Than the truth, then you've imbalanced a human being.
Okay.
And when the human being is imbalanced, they can do terrible, terrible things.
That pretty much was the gist of what I wanted to do, because Sister Teresa just mentioned freedom, justice, and equality, the lack thereof being a cause to the mental disorders. So let me ask this question, which may seem elementary, but how do you tie the lack of that to a mental illness or mental disorder? Sister Teresa,
I can finish. I'm so full right now because this is what I do all day and I love my people. And first of all, I have to say the minister said the solution to most things is love. And so when you love your people, you have that passion and you want to see change. So I want to say that first. And so it's like a disease or illness. Anything left untreated too long creates long-term effects, and it creates a long-standing illness. So when you have indefinite injustice and you have indefinite, where there's no justice, there's no peace, of course. But when you have these inequalities and you're sitting in poverty too long, it then produces other behaviors like savage behavior. So when you put someone in a box, working in the Bronx, living in a 1-block radius and living in projects where they keep people enslaved and contained to a 1-block community where there's no access to good food and treatment and all these other things, you create animalistic behaviors, which then creates savagery, which then creates other kind of mental health disorders. Some people become very narcissistic because we as a people need constant validation because we've been so invalidated, as Sister Naira, I'm sure, can touch on, that we become grandiose in our nature. And you seen the brother or the sister or somebody that come in our mosque or walking down the street that's extra. We call them extra. And sometimes they need that. They don't even realize that they're really outwardly displaying some level of mental health concern, that they're not even conscious that they're being a certain way. People who talk loud in public, who don't who are not familiar with social cues, they've lost touch with reality. So when you live in these type of communities where there's no justice and when you have all these things happening, it produces random personality disorders that become dysfunctional. And when they're not treated and resolved, it turns into long-term effects.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We got a question from the audience again. I'm going to go ahead and read it out. It said, what are some steps a person should take as they're rebuilding their life as they're leaving an alcoholic or verbally, emotionally, physically abusive relationship? It's not addressed to anyone in particular, so we'll go Sister Naira, Brother David, we'll go Brother Anthony, and Sister Teresa.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I would definitely say first and foremost, the first step to any process when you are detoxing or getting yourself from any toxic environment is to first prayer. You know, we got to connect back to the source. The more we can submit ourselves to communicating with the God first, your answers will come, right? And then as you are leaving a toxic relationship or a toxic environment, you gotta have what we would say, as Sister said, a safe environment. Someone where you can go and remove your physical beingness until you're able to get your mental and your spiritual well-being in check, right? So that's what I would say. First, prayer. Seek refuge in God. Being able to remove your physical self out of the environment, go to someone, a safe place, a different relative, or move into a different space, but be able to build that connection with God. Because a lot of times we try to do things ourselves. We're trying to figure it out ourselves, and we're not going back to the source, which is God Himself.
Yes, ma'am. Praise be to Allah. Did either Brother Anthony?
Beautifully said, my sister, and she's right on point. It definitely begins with that source, God, Allah, whatever you might call that source, but it's that source where you can plug in and get your daily recharge. Now, I think too, earlier we talked about the importance of communication, and we all mentioned and agreed of how you have to have that safe space and place where you can go and you can let go and release a lot of that stuff that you've experienced, and it's really trauma that you've experienced, and hopefully we'll have a chance to talk a little bit more about trauma in our show as well. But to have that safe place to express yourself. Earlier we talked about communication, and people do not grow or evolve or be able to unload all of their trauma that they absorb or bring with them from whatever that source was that was abusive or unhealthy. Stuffing stuff is never healthy and is never helpful. People have the tendency to be like volcanoes, right? And we know what happens over time with a volcano. It erupts. Only thing is, an eruption does not always have to take place externally, coming out. See, there's a disruption that can take place on the inside, internally as well. That's where the anxiety and the stress and the headaches and the depression and the anger and a whole lot of other different things come from, because we're holding that stuff. But we have to have that healthy, safe outlet where you can go and release a lot of that, where you can get an honest representation and an honest support and feedback that can let you know that you're on a course or a path that can be safe and healthy and nurturing. And it is a it is a process. I would want the listening audience to understand things don't happen overnight, because most of us didn't get to how we are last night. So one of the things that we want to do is be patient in our process of growth and healing. You have to be patient with yourself and loving yourself so that you know that you're on a healthy and positive course where somebody isn't just trying to make you be something that you might not be ready to be overnight.
Praise be to Allah. And then, Sister Teresa, was there anything that you wanted to add to that particular question before we go to the next one?
Sure. I'll just say this, and I'll speak to a few of the other maybe communities, and that is I use a lot of confrontational therapy, which is I confront issues sometimes so that we can kind of get to a certain point and they can be reminded that it's not okay or it is okay. But we first must also discuss the origin of how we ended up in that relationship. Because for some of us, we have patterns of people that we choose to be with, and those patterns follow us from person to person. And sometimes that could be the solution is really within yourself and your choices. And then once you figure out that there's a pattern, now we have to then discover how do we break the pattern of that cycle of choosing that. Was it that your daddy beat your mother? Was it that was your first relationship? What are you? Do you have low self-esteem? You don't believe that you deserve better? How do we now? Let's start addressing why am I in these situations? Because sometimes I find myself in a situation, I'll be like, I don't do that. That's not what I normally do. I don't know how I ended up in this situation. If it's something that you're not used to getting into, that's one thing. But if you see a pattern, I always tell some of my clients to start writing down daily journals where they can start patterning some of their ways. And then when you see the common denominator comes back to yourself and your choices, then you can start pinpointing why you're making those choices. Is it a history of abuse? Is it other things? Maybe you don't feel good self-worth. All those things we have to then explore.
Praise be to Allah. Brother Ahmed, you had a question.
Yes. I know we spoke about communication and the importance of communication, between individuals and learning to express ourselves with each other. But in our studies, we encourage to self-analyze ourselves, take self-analysis, and learning ourselves, learn to understand ourselves, and learning to heal ourselves. But how important is it in our everyday life in our community that our people take on the task to recognize issues in others? How others react, how others act. To give you an example, I grew up in South Jamaica, Queens. I mean, you come out the door every day, somebody's getting killed. And at a young age, because I was around the teachings and I studied a little bit, I had a little knowledge, so I was able. But it kind of shocked me. 13-year-old, 14-year-old young men were shooting each other. And for a long time, it bothered me, and I didn't understand it. But then I grew to start to analyze it. And I talked to some of the brothers, because the brothers you see on the panel here, we all are youth mentors. We take on junior FY class. And that's one of the things that we try to implement in their minds to not only self-analyze themselves, but hey, when you run into something, you should be able to notice it, pinpoint it, look at it, understand it in seconds, and either deviate or deal with it. So how important is it that we're able to recognize mental issues, things that's not normal?
Yes, I want to say this. As I'm listening to this conversation and I'm thinking about the ills of us as a people in the Black community and what we go through, in our homes, what our grandparents, our parents have gone through, in this day and time, they have a label for everything that we're discussing. It wasn't a label when my grandmother was going through it. It wasn't a label when my great-grandmother was going through. We've been going through things since we've been here in the wilderness of North America for over 400 years. Okay, and we was in that dispensation in time. They may have called it depression. They may have called it anxiety, but they didn't have a name like we have a name. They had to deal with things. And for us in this dispensation of time, just taking responsibility for myself, I had to learn who I am and what I've gone through by talking with my grandmothers, talking with my mother, understanding how they dealt with things, you know, as I was going through it myself. One of the main problems that we have is there's a disconnect when it comes to communication, when it comes back to the family, because what you've gone through, you can almost trace it down through your family history. Somebody in your family done been through it, and they had to deal with it. So communication in the Black community is important when you got to go back to the family. Go back to what happened to your family. Look at, when you talk about pattern, sister, it's a pattern of drug abuse in my family. It's a pattern of alcohol in my family. It's a pattern of rape in my family. All of these things, divorce in my family. All of these things I had to go through. But how did I come out of it? I had to take responsibility. I could not be a victim to it anymore. I had to make a decision that I wanted to change the cycle, which means I had to put myself through a process. But through changing the cycle, the first thing that for me in taking responsibility was to get to know myself. And I thank Allah for the teachers of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And as I got to know myself, I still wasn't strong enough. I suffered from anxiety. I went through the mental health therapy and being on Xanax and all of these different things that they prescribed you on. That didn't help me. It was only when I was able to go through this process and being able to fully understand the way my mind works, understanding what has happened in my family line, and being able to change that direction by accepting responsibility to no longer be a victim of circumstances. So communication, to answer your question, communication is important, but we have to communicate to the very same sources that have gone through what we're going through to change the behavior patterns, because most times we're doing what we have seen. We are victims of that which we have experienced in the household. The traumas that we face, our parents faced it, our grandparents faced it. Now we just have to be wise enough to get in communication. For those of us that can, get in communication with those who have gone through it and find out some of the methods that they have to go through, and then add what we have in modern time, modern technology, modern ways to do it, and bring ourselves up out of the condition. And I can truly say this, with the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that's a new system that will break the ills of the Black man and woman that we're going through, So a lot of the things that I can say is really just taking responsibility and being able to communicate to that which has us in bondage in our own minds. So thank you so much for that.
So when you speaking of communication, what do you say to a person who talk to themselves? I mean, you get a lot of that.
And see, when we're looking at it from the perspective of the technology of Dianetics and Scientology, right? You're looking at what they call valences. You have many different minds that exist in you, So the person that's talking to themselves, they have been under so much suppression that now they are not even functioning from their own self. They're functioning from the different minds that's speaking to them. And that's true. You do have different minds. Many of us right now, there's a conversation that's going on in your head right now as we're speaking that's not in your own self.
That's right. That's right.
So the science of it, when we begin to learn the science of how the mind operates, now we can effectively go in and handle that so that now we can get the person to do this, accept their own and be their self. Right now, we're not our own self. We've been made into perfect devils. We carry many different mindsets, many.
Yeah.
And that's for those of us who have what we so-called claim as sanity. We still got different minds. So we may not be considering ourselves as depressed or, suffer from anxiety, but we have a lot of different, if you want to put a name to it, personality disorders, because we have a lot of different mindsets that have influenced the way we operate in present time.
Sister, your comment reminded me, I was reading up on epigenetics. And epigenetics is the transfer or the inheritance of one trauma from one generation to the next generation to the next generation. And you just said we're dealing with many minds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is it fair to say with epigenetics, because what epigenetics does, the trauma is attached to the DNA, but it doesn't change the DNA. So, but that trauma is inherently passed on through the generations. So now is it fair to say to any of you that trauma can pass on from the grandmother, from the great-great-grandmother to the grandmother, to the grandmother, to the child, and all of that trauma be compounded to the present day child, all the way back 3, 4, 5 generations?
Absolutely. And this is where you have the Willie Lynch. That's what we're looking at today. The trauma. Yeah. This is from at a cellular level. So yes, absolutely. But that trauma can be broken with the transfer of knowledge. That's why information and knowledge is two different things. That which the Savior has brought to us will actually, especially with supreme wisdom, it will reconstruct you at a cellular level.
That's right.
So what we're doing is we have to impart knowledge.
Come on now.
Knowledge, when you're talking about giving birth to a God, knowledge will reconstruct us at a cellular level.
Absolutely.
So now we get to eradicate those mental disorders from a cellular level. So thank you to Allah, and that's why I personally appreciate Dianetics, because it helps you to get down to a cellular level. We're not dealing with the symptoms. We are eradicating psychosomatic illnesses from a cellular level. The mind is making the body sick. So when you find one who is suffering from anxiety, grief, depression, apathy, all of these things, this is coming up from a cellular level that's passed down from generation after generation after generation. And you will find many of us doing things that don't even belong to us. Scripturally, it says it. The sins of the mothers and fathers shall be visited upon the children. Sins, transgressions, things that our parents went through, we are going through it today. So everything that you do, everything that you're at the face of, it doesn't all belong to you. We just have to know how to get in and find out our thoughts from other people's thoughts.
Go ahead.
And eradicate what doesn't belong to us.
Yes, man. And it's funny, you mentioned that, I don't have to read it, but that was Exodus 34 and 7.
The most honorable life, Muhammad said we got to get to the root of
yes.
Right. See, this is where we're going to the root of everything when we're using, for me, I'm just offering what I have to offer. And I appreciate everyone that's on here. I appreciate your skills. I appreciate what you're bringing. But what I'm bringing is a modern science to mental health. Something that is going to help us as a people to get down to the root of our problems, and to be able to eradicate those things that's keeping us from being our God self. We're talking about ability versus disability. This technology will help us to be raised up with ability.
Come on, sis. Thank you so much. Yes, and that was Exodus 34 and 7. The children and the fathers together from one child to the next child to generations, my sister.
Yes.
Praise be to Allah. No, I was going to make that point today, and I had been studying the effects of all of this, and I went directly to the struggle for balance, where the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan talks about mental imbalance in study guide number 4, and that scripture came to my mind, so I definitely was going to deal with it. With that, and that's how I ended up reading on epigenetics, which I had never heard of until this week when I was reading on it, and I thought that was very interesting. And something else you also said, of course, the Willie Lynch syndrome. You know, in 1712, this man taught a method to slave owners that he said that if they taught it for just 1 year, every day, that it would become self-refueling and would be going on for at least 300 years. The interesting thing is we're only 8 years past that 300-year mark, and we're still feeling the effect of the Willie Lynch syndrome. All right.
But this is a technology, by the way.
Absolutely.
It's a technology. So the technology enslaved our minds, and it will be modern technology that will totally free us.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Brother Ahmed.
Another question. How direct is the connect of healing the body as important into healing the mind?
Yes. Well, the mind, every thought you have produces, energy, right? And depending on how that energy is encapsulated or, it's stuck in lower vibrations, it's going to make you sick. So the purer your thoughts, the more healthy you are. Everything starts with a thought. All diseases comes from the mind. So the more we can clean up the mind, the more we clean up the body. It's a direct connection. Direct. The mind is making the body sick. It's called psychosomatic illnesses.
Right.
So everything starts from the mind. Everything starts from the mind. So the more we can heal our thoughts, the more we will heal our bodies. Right. So we just have to be able to, if you can get a person to change their mind, they can change their dynamics. They can change their reality. It's all about getting a person to change their mind and giving them a healthy viewpoint to look at. Most of our people can't see the light because the light has not been present in the Black community before the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in the manner in which we have it now.
That's right.
So we gotta point the people towards the light of truth so it can remove the darkness of our minds. And our people are suffering from anxiety. We are suffering from grief. We are suffering from depression because we do not have the resource of light, which is truth.
Yes,
so if we can get people to change their minds, we can get people to change their reality. I've been on the medications, and I know what it did for me. It kept me blind, deaf, and dumb, numb. I was not functioning. But
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, when I got the truth, I was able to clean out the medicine cabinet.
Praise be to
God.
God.
It reminded me of Supreme Wisdom. And the Supreme Wisdom, it says, why does he fear now since he's a big man? And it says because he was taught to eat the wrong food. Fear is a thought, right? So that's the relation to your question where you just asked, Brother Ahmed. The food does have a direct relation to thought.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
All right. Listen, and it's very interesting you just made that point, because I think it was Henry Berry at the Virginia House of Commons that said if we should cut off every avenue by which light may enter the mind of the slave, then we got it wrapped up. We got it. So that's a good point. We have some very good questions we want to try. We don't have a lot of time left, but some good questions coming from the viewing audience, and I want to get one in. This sister is asking, greetings to the panel. What is the remedy, assistance, or treatment from head injuries from childhood that may affect mental illness or mental health? It's not addressed to any one of you in particular, though. Anybody, head injuries from childhood that may affect mental illness or mental health.
I mean, if y'all want to go, because I can. I'm trying not to keep talking over here. Yes,
I would just offer, if someone may have experienced some type of head injury, or it might fit the category in the medical sense of what they call a TBI, which is a traumatic brain injury, or it could be something less than that. The first thing that needs to happen, in my humble opinion, just to look at from a scientific point of view, a medical point of view of any type of injury that has been that has taken place to the brain, then a medical examination such as an MRI needs to be done, or a certain type of scan needs to be done of the brain, so you can look at and see any type of physical trauma, damage, or change that's done. And that's the best starting point, looking internally, and then you have more information to make some further decisions and diagnostic type of intervention.
Praise be to Allah. All right. We got another question from our audience here. Is there a direct link between poverty and poor mental health?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I'm broke because my
I lost my damn mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you're not functioning from a well-being state. You're looking at, okay, so here it is. We're looking at this. See, the mind is made up of picture. Okay. So if I'm looking at a poor condition, it's going to create poor images in my mind. I'm going to start saying, I'm broke. I can't. I don't. And all of this is mental images that we are creating in our minds, which actually, guess what? Keeps us in a lower state of condition. So if your environment, if your home is, you don't have light, you don't have water, you don't have food, those are images that's playing back in the mind that's going to keep pulling that image up, and that's all you're looking at. This is why when you're dealing with mental health and poverty, it's good to go and look at things of beauty. Go to the beach, go to a park, go somewhere. Just because your environment communicates one thing, go to another place that can give you a different image in your mind and will begin to raise the light up in you. Now you can create a new image which will change your condition.
Yes,
the mind is made up of pictures. So if you change the image, you can change the reality. Manifest it.
Teach Muhammad.
All right. So listen, next question. Oh no, Sister Teresa, I hear you. I see you. Come on. My bad. Take away.
I was just going to say in quick, because I know we're short on time, is that one, I'm thankful for having this mental health training. Two, I'm thankful for being exposed to Dianetics and how that impacts, and being able to hybrid the two together has been great, right? And so, but what I'll say about the poverty piece is, I'm sorry, I actually just lost my train of thought, so we're gonna move on. So, like, I wanted to really
take your time.
You got it. Yeah, you got it.
No, what I was gonna say, because we haven't really brought up COVID-19 as much, and that is that COVID-19 is the great unmasker, I say, of what's the reality of our situation. And oftentimes in the hood, we drive nice cars and we roll around in that car all day because we're really trying to escape what we've built for ourselves within. And so now that we got the stay home order is really the get right order, because now you're faced to finally meet the person that you never met before, which is yourself, and to meet you didn't even know the dog in the house. You was like, I didn't know he did that. And so, your children and all the other people. So now that you're in poverty and we have that COVID, I've seen an increased amount of cases of mental health symptoms exacerbated because now everyone's forced to stay, and it's almost like a disease. It needs to get out. And so at the stay-at-home order, we've noticed the increase of Black people, brown people in the community trying to seek more assistance. And we have a rise of suicide rate, as she said before. We have a rise of drug use because people can't tolerate their condition that they're in. And a lot of that condition stems from inequality of being poor. That makes you a certain kind of way. It starts to train your brain a certain kind of way. And then you start living in that. And then soon it becomes your reality. So definitely your circumstances. And I tell people, the messenger said this. He said, if you have a 1-bedroom studio, if you have just a little bit, you make it the cleanest, best thing that you have. And that's what I encourage people. Whatever you may have, wherever you may start, whatever it is that you have, you make it the best that you can make it. Until then, you can build and feel accomplished and build on that best thing. But don't just let it crumble. Don't just say all I got is a studio, so I don't really care what I put in it. I often hear people say that. Well, all I got is this, so I'm not gonna take care of it. Then when I get something nice, I'm gonna take care of it. No, you have to start with taking care of yourself. Yourself will then take care of the rest of the needs. So definitely poverty plays a part in that.
Praise be to Allah. Next question is, what is the definition of a toxic relationship? We hear this all the time. This is like a male-female battle, right? This is a social media fight. Come on, psychologists, licensed clinical social worker, Dianetics, Gold Seal people. Tell us what it's
about. Let me answer that. No.
I will jump in and say,
Relax out, man.
Toxicity is addictive. Toxicity is addictive. It can be a very addictive drug, meaning that we get ourselves in so much toxicity, we just crave it. And sometimes we don't even know how to function in healthy relationships. And I'm only putting that out there to start the discussion that most of us function in toxicity very well, but when things start to happen that are good for us, we have a tendency to sabotage that because we're not comfortable with that. And I am a testimony to that. I get people start liking me too much. I'll be like, hey, that's too much attention going on. We're gonna have to do something to mess that up. I'm used to playing the background over here. I do secure. I stand over here. I don't need it all. There's too much going on. And so you start what's called self-sabotage, which I really want us to write down. Is called self-sabotaging behaviors that really we get a step up and we do things unconsciously or even consciously to sabotage ourselves to take us back to it, because that's what we're comfortable at and that's what we think we should be at. But once we move into acceptance that we are the greatest people and knowledge is great, but it's hard to see the light, Sister Naira, when you got so much stuff clouding it. It's hard to say, yeah, you need to pull on that light. You need to pull on God when you don't know God. You don't know yourself. You don't see a light in your life because you live in the projects and you got 2 pair of shoes and a pair of pants. There is no light for you. So then the next discussion becomes, how do we uncover the light? How do we find cracks to get through the light? And so I wanted to kind of dialogue a little bit. I know we're about to close out, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
So are you committing to part 2?
Part 2 is definitely toxic relationships and how it affects our lives. Toxic relationships.
Part 2?
Brother Anthony?
Yes, sir.
Sister Naira, Brother
Part
Jawad,
two.
Absolutely, because I really think it's important when we're looking at the family structure.
Very important.
Right? And repairing the Black family. Like I could go on and on about this topic all day.
Right.
But
Praise
as
Allah.
you
Let's do
said,
that.
when you're looking at toxic, first and foremost, toxicity, we got to start for self. Everything is about taking responsibility. Before I can say anything about my husband, and I had to take responsibility for me. I had to learn what's in me that makes me respond, what makes me pop off. Okay, I see my parents do it. Period. It is what it is, right? Or the inability to show affection. My mother loved me, loved her children, but she was not a hugger. Her parents,
Ernestine.
okay? So I had to remind that my husband,
I'm telling
kids, their whole family was like, ooh, wait, a little bit too close to my face.
Right.
So it was only when I was willing to look at, confront, and be truthful with myself to change learned behavior, right? We learn whether we duplicate what we see or we duplicate what we don't see. We duplicate what we feel or duplicate what we don't feel. So it's all about taking responsibility. But somebody had to start that process. See, no, if you don't have, the light is not on. The light is available. And this is where our work come in. Because somebody taught me how to be a lady. And that was through the MGT class. You understand? I had to be retaught, re-educated on how to get to the root of myself. However, with this process of Dianetics, it helped me to remove the toxic behaviors.
Say that.
See, we got to be able to get down, sit, and look. Somebody got to help you look and find those things that's keeping you or making you act other than your own self, which is a righteous human being. We've been away from our ancestors, our mother's dressing room for over 400 years. That's not just in clothes. How is her mind dressed? How is her mind covered in the way of God? So when you're looking at relationships, they have regal relationships. We got to study the history of where we come from to understand that we're joint heirs with the Christ. We got to go into history. In this dispensation of time, I'm close out because I get passionate. This is not the time to be ignorant.
That's right.
Okay?
Right.
We need
Come on,
more examples of love. Okay, and how we view the examples. We got to stop looking at each other from the jealous and envy eye. We drink too much E&J. Okay, look at those who can present a good family structure and then communicate with them. What's your success? What's your failure?
Right. Right.
But sometimes we get caught up into these mindsets that don't belong to us. And we don't want to seek counsel with those who can help us get to that next level of what we desire. See, I look at my brothers and sisters, and as I'm looking at each and every one of you, I'm gaining a quality from you that I can actually take back and apply to my life. We don't have to study. We have many examples in the world today that we can look towards and become that healthy family unit and become organic again. So how do you get rid of toxic relationships or accept the responsibility to change yourself? And then you can actually get the type of person that you want for yourself by the way your mind operates and what frequency you vibrate from.
And the discipline. It takes discipline, though. It's a very disciplined act. Trust me.
Praise be to Allah.
I
really want to thank you all.
I'm still gonna tell on you, sister. Now I'm telling Sister Ernestine. You said she give you your mama. No, I'm telling.
Praise Allah.
She fixed my plate. When I came to Tampa, she fixed my plate. She put that macaroni. I'm telling. I don't care what none of y'all.
Put that macaroni and cheese on my plate.
Well, listen. What we want to do really quick, we'll start with yourself, Brother Anthony, on some final words.
Absolutely. First, I so appreciate this opportunity to be a part of this type of forum. And I'm so eager to have a part 2 take place because I'm sure a lot of other questions are out there, and I'm also sure that we have so much more that we can offer as well. I just want to make sure everybody knows you're not alone. You don't have to struggle or go through anything by yourself. There's a lot of help out there for you. We love you. We care about you, and we want you to know a lot of other people out there who love you and care about you too. I would humbly ask that the panelists would allow the guests, because I'm not sure if we have the time frame, and I know people can be overwhelmed with information sometimes. But if for right now, all of the questions can come through you all to your website, and then it can be kind of parsed out to wherever it might sit more appropriately. That's a good way for people to not feel left out, and they have some place that they can go to for right now, just to have some of their questions and thoughts and concerns kind of heard. And then we can be more specific in how we can offer some more solutions and information and remedy for our next broadcast. And I'm so looking forward to, so we can get down on this one more again.
That's right.
Yes, sir, brother. Sister Teresa, final words from you, my sister.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, so much, so much. I'm so energized. Even when I don't have energy, when I see you all, it gives you, that's how it's true that when you have love and you have desire, that it produces an energy that surpasses whatever your body thought it could or couldn't do. And so I'm very, very excited. I am always here. I'm always available. And no suffering in silence, as the brother said. We're not going to be suffering in silence anymore. We're not going to be protesting our rights. We're going to be giving ourselves permission and right to do better, to be better, and to be better individuals, to be better for our families, to be better for our children. Give yourself permission today. If you are on this call today, give yourself permission to live bigger, to live greater, to live freer, to live in a more just place. Even if you have to create that space for yourself in your house. This is my house. When you take your shoes off at my door, you act accordingly. You do the things I need you to do when you enter this house, because you don't have to enter. So to get rid of toxicity, you must dispel those things that come inside your aura. I control it. Now, it may be a long time I may spend, but guess what? I'm in peace. I'm in solidarity, and I control my environment. And I tell everyone, don't ever allow anyone else to dictate your comings and goings except God himself. And the righteous movements that you make every day. You never allow other people to dictate how you move. You have the guidance of how you should move. You take ownership of that. And I want everybody to do something good for yourself every single day, because you deserve it. You are the original people, and you are meant to take over and take charge of this planet, but you can't do it mentally ill. You can't do it crying about what somebody else did to you. You can't do it blaming your husband and your children. You can only do it if you take charge of yourself first, to take charge of this post, and then you can go out and move out and put your boots on and soldier in the community. Thank you.
Come on, man. It's Islamic energy. Oh my God, man. I just don't know what to do with it, man. I just don't know what to do with it. Because here it is. Sister Naira and Brother Dawood, final words. Come on.
I just want to thank all of you for your energy. It's been a beautiful experience. I'm definitely ready for a part 2. I think our people would definitely enjoy it.
Yes.
One of the scriptures that I love is when 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there in the midst. And I definitely believe this, just from my own personal perspective as being an onlooker tonight as well, that he visited here on the Jack Brothers show.
Come on, man.
Come on, man. I love bowing to the God when he speaks. And I say that very sincerely, because I just, sometimes I'm in awe when my wife lets God communicate through her. And I'm just saying, right? But when she get going, and that God don't let up.
Yes, sir.
But I just want to thank you for the opportunity, especially for the audience to see that there is possibility and help.
Praise Allah.
And I would just say, thank you, honey. I want to say thank you all for allowing us to share space with you all. I'm very grateful. Each and every one of you have added value to my life, my knowingness, my ability to take what you have said today to go back and help our people. I wear these keys around my neck, and this is to remind me, that you have the key to your salvation. So I'm saying to the listening audience tonight, you have the key to your salvation. Just use the key and unlock yourself. All praises due to Allah. And I just got word from earlier this week. I got word from our student regional student minister Patrick Muhammad of the 7th region, and he gave us some words from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And one of the things that he brought back to us is he said that the ministers say we must be friends in this dispensation of time. So I have gained friends tonight.
That's right.
And we want to practice friends, because a friend will lay down his or her life for you.
That's right.
And I'm willing to lay down my life for my people, because my life and my death is all for Allah. And you all are the Allahs that I'm willing to lay down my life for. I have a friend in Sister Naira and Brother David, and we are working to repair the Black family. Absolutely. So visit us on www.repairtheblackfamily.com. We're willing to serve you as much as possible. I love y'all, family. This has been excellent. And yes, I'm ready for part 2. Right?
Praise be to Allah. Brother Kawhi, final words, brother.
Kawhi!
Well, I'd like to first thank Allah for putting in Brother Ahmed's heart to have this type of discussion. I really thought that when we brought y'all on that we would be, and we probably did put information out there to help people. But listening to you, I didn't know how much help I needed.
Come on, man.
And so I ain't have nothing to say. It was just like I was going through a personal counseling session, a personal auditing session,
Right.
and I just took in the information. And then by listening to you, I realized how much help people around me in my circle needed to hear this tonight. So I thank Allah for you for coming to this panel and just giving us the information that we have now. I know I got 3 places or 3 levels of help that I can refer to get help for myself. And so I thank you, I thank you, I thank you. And may Allah continue to bless you in the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We're so happy to
Brother Jackie, final words.
Come on.
So y'all telling me I got to get rid of my friend Bubba? I've been talking to Bubba for a long time, man. I got to get rid of Bubba. Okay, but no, this was excellent. Just like everyone has said, now I got to go upstairs now and tighten up my family unit. That's my focus, man. Getting my support system
That's right.
together strong, and then we as the Jock brothers. I was thinking about us as you was talking. Normally you have like a cadre of sisters who stick together and they talk it out. They talk out their problems and their issues, and and we as Jock brothers, we gonna have to practice that aspect just among ourselves. Break all the stigmas of men don't say this, we don't share. We got to break all of that.
That's right, brother.
And we as men, we gotta focus on our family unit and like you say, Sister Naira, ask questions. So I gotta counsel with Brother Dawood on, what he does as a husband. I gotta counsel with you on that. That's my auditor. Matter of fact, Brother Dawood is my auditor. So definitely we got a lot of talking to do. So thank you all for that. Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir.
Brother Ahmed.
Man, wow. I like to thank all the panelists for coming on, because a lot of times it didn't seem like we was going to get this to happen. And, sometimes like we have junior FY class and we go to brothers sometime and other people and say, why don't you come talk to the young brothers? And they're like, well, what am I going to say? And I'm like, wow, like there's so much that we have to give our people. I mean, the knowledge is so vast on so many levels, but analyzing ourselves and healing our minds on that note alone is just so huge. So I'm looking forward to part 2. I'm looking forward to part 3.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to
I'm like, Pop Daddy, we can do this every weekend.
All right, we did it.
But the word, see, I grew up in the nation in New York, and the believers was all family to me. I tell everybody that. Forget that. It was love, and everybody was my cousin. Everybody. It wasn't that brother or that brother. They was cousins to me. They was family. So I love the fact that some of you use the word love, and some people don't hear that enough. Some people don't. When I took my first psychology class, my psychology teachers talked about hugging. And like you, sister, I was like, wow, I didn't even get a lot of hugs when I was growing up. And she called me to the front of the class. She said, come here, let me hug you. I was like, oh my God. It's these little things that we may not get and we may not understand how it impacts our mental state. Yeah. And then like the sister said, sometimes we feel love or too much admiration. Whoa. We self-sabotage it. That's too much love. Right. But as we learn to cope and deal with it, these platforms have to be, I'm talking about, we have to have these platforms more and more and more. But I really didn't want to go into all that, because what I wanted to hear I wanted to give my closing remarks to Brother Anthony. I wanted to hear what you said again about Minister Farrakhan, where he was at. You was explaining the position he was in and where he was at, you know, in his state.
The self-actualization.
So yeah, explain that one more time, real quick. Because I'm recording this. That was deep. That was too deep.
You know, my understanding is with self-actualization, you're looking at a person who can function at the highest level possible of their being, right? So that's in all areas of their life. And they do it in a way where first, you know, it's God-given because they're connected to a source where they first understand and they know they didn't get there and do it all by themselves, right? Because when you hear the minister talk, he's always talking about Master Fard Muhammad, and he's always talking about the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. So you have to have that source that you connect to, and then, you know, you're always in a place that you're never letting naysayers or the negative energy of the world or people who don't have your best interest at heart try to hold you down and hold you back. This world has a lot in it that desires to keep you down, to keep me down, to have us disconnected to our source. The self-actualization piece is a process, and it's a process where you're constantly striving to be the best that you can be in all areas of your life, being able to see and reflect and recognize in these areas where you know you can improve, but you have to have those healthy, positive people around you that you can always reflect it off to, because everybody who's close to you, right? You know, there is such a thing as emotional vampires, right? There are toxic people. Everybody doesn't always want what's best for you. They're close to you, you know, they're your friend, but they might be the djinn too, right?
That's right.
Always of who's in our company, because you gotta have the right people in your circle that's always going to help you be the best that you can possibly be. Would love to talk some more about that, Brother Ahmed, about the
next week.
Piece. If we can do it next week, then let's do it next week. No doubt. No doubt.
Yes, sir.
Hey, brother Anthony and Brother Dawood, I mean, I love. Oh, what you going to say something, sister?
Oh, I just wanted to make an announcement if it's appropriate.
Go ahead.
Yes, so
next week. That's your announcement.
We're gonna talk about that. Okay, because I got a lot of my listeners from our Tuesday night call. They on here, so I got to get permission from my listeners.
Yes,
training. So let me get with the listeners, and I'll get back with y'all on that. Okay.
Absolutely.
But I just wanted to raise a very important point. As I stated in the beginning, we are part of a coalition, COVID coalition in the 7th region. And right now we are looking for educators, doctors, mental health therapists, those who can actually bring their expertise to this coalition, this COVID coalition, so that we can better help and guide our people during this time. So if you are interested in being a part of this COVID coalition, where you can provide help and solution to our people in a collective manner, please email us at repairoftheblackfamily@gmail.com. We'll take your information, send your name, your phone number, and what field you work in, whether it's education, health, or mental health, if you would like to be a part of a growing coalition to help our people during this time. So Repair the Black Family, and just put coalition.
Brother Kawhi, if you can make sure that Sister Teresa, Brother Anthony, Sister Nayeem, Brother David, if each of them have each other's information, that will be good, because I believe that all of you can be a part of that coalition and be effective.
Yes, sir.
I want to thank you.
One more thing, Kadeem. I just wanted to say, bro, I'm sorry, Brother Anthony and Brother Dawood. I mean, I love my sisters, but Brother Anthony and Brother Dawood, you are honorary part of the Jock Brothers. Once we get these t-shirts printed up and these hats, we're gonna send it to you.
You got to get the sisters in, dude. No, you're not gonna put that on me.
Man, that brother got mental health issues right there, right? Hey, look, that has nothing to do with the rest of the job right now. That's his issues, right? Sisters, you definitely get yours first. I don't know where this brother comes from.
That's right.
Yeah. He got an illness.
Don't
He
leave
didn't
us
know no
out.
better.
Hey,
You know.
Kadeem, take the show, brother. Let's put that brother on. What did you say, Willie Lynn said? Man, shut up.
Stop it.
You don't supposed to say that. Shut up, man. All right. my bad. My bad. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Sister Teresa. That's slavery. I'm sorry.
Listen,
We would never leave you all out. We would never leave you all out.
You
I'm gonna make your
wouldn't.
plate first. I'm gonna make your plate first. I'm gonna give you your muffin first. You know what I mean? I'm gonna hook you up.
That's
Be your
right.
bean soup first.
That's right. That's what I'm talking about.
crazy. Hold up. She ain't
I
never
did.
met Nola. Crazy to a lot.
Talking about cray.
I want to thank you all, each one of our guests, for accepting our invitation to be a part of this show. Jock Brothers present Let Us Make Man, because certainly we can't make men without overcoming the stigmatism of mental health and mental illness. And one thing that I'm learning is true: men do cry in the dark.
Oh, yeah.
Men do not tell of these because of the bravado of being a man. You know, and that's a silly stigmatism when we think about it, because what we think works is we try to use marriage as a coping mechanism. We indulge ourselves into careers as a coping mechanism, but at the end of both of those, we're not happy. So one ends, we hurt people. We know that.
Yes,
phrase,
yes,
we do
yes.
that. And then we ended up on careers where some of us go postal or jump out of windows and hurt other people. So
Yes.
I'm so grateful for this, because truthfully, you know, I think the Jock Brothers,
Tell it.
realistically, we've been in counseling this show.
That's right.
Because certainly we
Straight
can't-
up. Straight up. Yeah. Straight up.
Real talk,
Yeah.
real talk. We were at odds an hour before the show.
We the temptation.
And real talk. I mean, we might not have had a Jock Brothers show next week,
Temptation.
but I really think
Hey,
we needed this for
Praise.
ourselves. But I would say to the Jock Brothers, and the panel could bear witness, it's not one session that heals you. It's a multiple session that will bring us to the ultimate point of clear. So, and then I just learned, like, there's like triple clear, quadruple clear. What is it? It's like
They got them
so Pentecostal clear.
Right.
I don't know. We got to reach the ultimate level of clear. So I want to thank you, and I want to thank our viewing audience, our listening audience, for tuning in to another episode of Jock Brothers Present Let Us Make Man. So be on the lookout, because we may be doing part 2 next week. We will let you all know in a couple of days. So at the same time, same black channel, every Tuesday evening, 7 o'clock p.m. Jock Brothers Present Let Us Make Man. Assalamu alaikum.